Breaking news out of Detroit, Michigan. In the past 72 hours, Canada has initiated emergency protocols to divert $850 billion worth of integrated automotive supply chains away from American manufacturing facilities. And this isn't a trade negotiation tactic. This is a complete industrial realignment that threatens to permanently shut down assembly lines employing 3 million Americans across 8 states. Within the next 11 minutes, I'm going to break down exactly 3 things. First, the cascade failure mechanism that's hitting Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 suppliers simultaneously. Second, the specific communities facing 40 to 60% unemployment within the next 90 days. And third, the irreversible damage to America's automotive manufacturing capacity that experts say could take 2 decades to rebuild. Here's the question nobody in Washington wants to answer. When a presidential threat triggers the largest supply chain divorce in industrial history, who actually pays the price? Let me paint you the picture. On January 28, 2025, Canadian Prime Minister's office released a joint statement with provincial premiers across Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta, announcing the Automotive Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. This wasn't a press conference. This was a declaration. According to documents obtained from the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association, the framework outlined immediate redirection of $847 billion in annual cross-border automotive transactions to domestic Canadian assembly operations and strategic partnerships with European and Asian manufacturers. On February 1, 2025, Magna International, the largest automotive supplier in North America, confirmed to Reuters that it had already begun the process of reallocating production capacity from its 29 facilities serving U.S. automakers to exclusive contracts with Volkswagen, BMW, and Hyundai for assembly operations in Ontario and Mexico. The Peterson Institute for International Economics released emergency analysis on February 3rd showing that 68% of critical automotive components used in American vehicle assembly, including transmissions, engine blocks, electrical systems, and advanced driver assistance systems, originate from Canadian facilities that have operated under integrated supply agreements since the 1965 Auto Pact. By February 4th, the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago published data confirming that just-in-time inventory systems at Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis facilities across Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Texas were already showing critical shortages, with some assembly lines reducing shifts by 30% due to parts unavailability. So how exactly does this work? Think of it like this. Imagine your entire house is built on a foundation where 70% of the structural beams come from one supplier who suddenly decides they're done working with you. You can't just order new beams from someone else because your entire house was designed around those specific dimensions, load capacities, and installation systems. The automotive supply chain operates on the same principle of deep integration. Step 1. A Canadian Tier 1 supplier like Linamar Corporation produces precision machine transmission components in Guelph, Ontario. Step 2. Those components are shipped across the border to a Tier 2 assembly facility in Michigan that integrates them into complete transmission systems. Step 3. Those transmission systems go to a final assembly plant in Detroit where they're installed in vehicles. The entire process operates on 18 to 36-hour delivery windows with zero inventory buffer. According to the Center for Automotive Research in Ann Arbor, when Canada redirects that Tier 1 production capacity to serve European or Asian manufacturers, the American Tier 2 facility doesn't just lose a supplier, it loses its entire reason to exist because retooling for a different supplier's components requires 18 to 24 months of engineering redesign and $200 to $400 million in capital investment per facility. The data from Yale School of Management's Supply Chain Analysis Lab validates this cascade effect. When a Tier 1 supplier exits, it triggers sequential failure in an average of 7. 3 Tier 2 suppliers and 22, 6 Tier 3 suppliers within the same supply network. Multiply that across $850 billion in redirected production, and you're looking at the coordinated shutdown of approximately 2,400 supplier facilities across the American Midwest and South. Let me introduce you to Marcus Patterson, 51 years old, quality control supervisor at a Tier 2 automotive electronics facility in Warren, Michigan, 20 minutes north of Detroit. Marcus has worked in automotive manufacturing for 29 years, starting as a line technician right out of community college and working his way up through certifications in Six Sigma quality management and advanced manufacturing systems. His facility employs 340 people and produces integrated dashboard electronic systems for General Motors vehicles, using circuit boards and sensor arrays manufactured by Martinrea International in Ontario. On February 2nd, Marcus received notification that Martinrea had terminated its supply contract effective March 15th, redirecting that production capacity to BMW's new electric vehicle facility in Oshawa. Marcus's facility cannot source equivalent components from domestic suppliers because the dashboard systems were co-engineered with Martinrea's specific technical specifications over a 7-year development partnership. His plant manager told the workforce that without those Canadian components, the facility will cease production by March 20th. Marcus makes $73,000 per year. His wife teaches elementary school. They have 2 kids in high school and a mortgage payment of $1,940 per month on a house they bought in 2019 that's now worth 30% less than they paid because Warren's real estate market has collapsed as automotive job losses mount. Marcus told the Detroit Free Press, "I've got maybe 6 weeks of severance if they even honor that. There's no other automotive work in this region anymore. Everything's connected to the same Canadian suppliers that are pulling out. I'm 51. Who's going to hire me to start over in a different industry?" Now meet Jennifer Holbrook, 44 years old, procurement manager at a Tier 3 steel stamping operation in Toledo, Ohio. Jennifer's facility produces body panel components using Canadian steel alloys from Stelco Holdings, formed to precise specifications required by Tier 2 assembly plants that integrate them into vehicle frames. Her company employs 180 workers and generates $47 million in annual revenue, with 82% of that coming from contracts dependent on Canadian steel inputs. According to documentation Jennifer provided to Ohio's Department of Job and Family Services, Stelco informed her company on January 30th that existing contracts would not be renewed past April 1st because that steel production is being reallocated to serve Volvo and Polestar assembly operations in Canada and Sweden. Jennifer's facility cannot simply switch to domestic steel suppliers because the stamping dies, hydraulic press configurations, and quality control systems were all engineered around Stelco's specific metallurgical properties. Retooling would cost $18 million for a company with $6 to $2 million in annual operating profit. The math doesn't work. Jennifer earns $68,000 per year. She's a single mother of 3. Her oldest daughter just started at Ohio State. Jennifer told NBC News, "I've spent 2 decades building expertise in automotive supply chain management. I speak the language. I know the systems. But when the entire supply chain is dismantling, that expertise becomes worthless. My daughter asked me if she should drop out of college because we won't be able to afford tuition after I lose my job. I had no answer for her." And it gets worse. Consider Thomas Chen, 39 years old, logistics coordinator at a transportation company in Pontiac, Michigan, that specializes in just-in-time delivery of automotive components between Canadian suppliers and American assembly plants. Thomas's company operates 67 trucks and employs 94 drivers, warehouse workers, and administrative staff. Their entire business model is built on the integrated supply chain that has operated seamlessly for 6 decades. According to Thomas's testimony to Michigan's Senate Commerce Committee on February 5th, his company has already lost contracts representing 58% of annual revenue as Canadian suppliers redirect their shipments to domestic Canadian customers or export directly to Europe and Asia through maritime channels. Thomas makes $64,000 per year managing logistics operations that will effectively cease to exist by summer. He told the Associated Press, "People think this is just about factory workers, but it's the truck drivers, the warehouse operators, the IT people managing inventory systems, the quality inspectors, the packaging suppliers. For every assembly line job that disappears, there are 4 or 5 jobs in the support ecosystem that vanish with it." Multiply Marcus's story, Jennifer's story, and Thomas's story by thousands of workers across hundreds of facilities in communities from Flint to Louisville to Tuscaloosa, and you begin to understand the human mathematics of industrial collapse. According to analysis from the Brookings Institution's Metropolitan Policy Program published February 4, 2025, the integrated automotive supply chain between Canada and the United States represents the most sophisticated example of cross-border industrial coordination in global manufacturing history. Over 60 years, companies invested approximately $340 billion in co-located facilities, shared research and development partnerships, and synchronized production systems specifically designed to optimize efficiency across the border. The Rand Corporation's Supply Chain Resilience Study from January 2025 warned that this integration created mutual dependency that could not be rapidly unwound without catastrophic economic consequences for both nations. But here's the kicker. Canada is absorbing that pain as strategic cost to achieve permanent industrial independence, while American workers are experiencing it as irreversible destruction of their livelihoods. The Council on Foreign Relations published emergency analysis on February 3rd, showing that Canada's automotive sector employs 550,000 workers compared to America's 3 million automotive manufacturing workforce, meaning the proportional economic impact is far more severe on the American side. The International Monetary Fund's revised North American economic forecast from February 5th projects that automotive supply chain disruption will reduce U.S. GDP growth by 0.7 percentage points in 2025, representing approximately $189 billion in lost economic output. Expert validation from MIT's Industrial Performance Center confirms the timeline of collapse. In the next 30 to 90 days, Tier 2 and Tier 3 suppliers will exhaust existing component inventories and begin announcing facility closures and mass layoffs. Within 6 to 12 months, major assembly plants will reduce production by 40 to 60% as they struggle with parts shortages, leading to cascading layoffs across final assembly operations. But here's what really concerns analysts at the Economic Policy Institute: the permanent damage to America's manufacturing capacity that occurs when specialized facilities shut down. According to their research published February 6th, when precision manufacturing facilities close, they don't simply pause operations waiting for better market conditions. The skilled workforce disperses to other industries or regions. The specialized equipment is sold off or scrapped. The institutional knowledge built over decades of production refinement disappears. The Peterson Institute warns that even if trade relationships were restored tomorrow, reconstituting this supply chain would require 15 to 20 years and $280 to $450 billion in capital investment to rebuild the facilities, workforce expertise, and supplier networks that are being destroyed right now in real time. Let me be crystal clear about what comes next. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics emergency preliminary data from February 2025, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Texas are collectively facing projected job losses between 780,000 and 1 million positions directly tied to automotive manufacturing and its supplier ecosystem over the next 12 to 18 months. The Cleveland Federal Reserve Bank published analysis showing that these job losses will trigger secondary economic effects, including 340,000 to 520,000 additional job losses in retail, services, healthcare, and local government as spending power evaporates from affected communities. The Urban Institute's housing market analysis from February 4th projects that automotive-dependent metro areas will experience residential property value declines of 25 to 40% as unemployment surges and residents attempt to relocate to regions with better job prospects. And it gets worse. The Tax Policy Center calculates that state and local governments in automotive manufacturing regions will lose $47 to $68 billion in annual tax revenue, forcing cuts to schools, infrastructure, emergency services, and social programs precisely when those communities need support most. But here's the kicker: this isn't happening in isolation. According to Bloomberg Economics analysis from February 5th, the automotive supply chain disruption is occurring simultaneously with broader trade tensions that are destabilizing multiple manufacturing sectors. The National Association of Manufacturers reports that business confidence among American manufacturers has collapsed to levels not seen since the 2008 financial crisis, with 73% of surveyed companies reporting they are delaying or canceling capital investment plans due to trade policy uncertainty. The Conference Board's CEO Confidence Index for February 2025 dropped to its lowest level in 15 years, with chief executives citing inability to plan for long-term production and supply chain strategies when fundamental trade relationships can be upended by presidential statements. J.P. Morgan Chase's manufacturing supply chain analysis warns that the combination of Canadian automotive supply chain separation, potential Mexican manufacturing restrictions, and ongoing tensions with Asian trading partners is creating a scenario where American manufacturers face simultaneous disruption across all three integrated North American production zones that have anchored industrial strategy since NAFTA's implementation in 1994. Let me be crystal clear about the political dimension. According to the American Political Science Review's analysis of trade policy and electoral outcomes, automotive manufacturing communities that experience mass layoffs show significant political volatility, with voters punishing incumbent parties regardless of which party initiated the policies that led to job losses. The Pew Research Center's survey data from January 2025 showed that 68% of Americans in manufacturing-dependent communities prioritized protecting American jobs as their top policy concern, but 71% also expressed frustration with trade policies that created uncertainty and disruption for businesses and workers. The Washington Post's analysis of swing state electoral dynamics published February 3rd noted that Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which collectively determine 46 electoral votes, all have significant exposure to automotive supply chain disruption, creating profound political risk for any administration presiding over mass manufacturing job losses in these crucial battleground regions. Let's recap the three critical points. First, Canadian redirection of $850 billion in automotive supply chains is triggering cascade failure across 2,400 American supplier facilities because deeply integrated just-in-time production systems cannot be rapidly reconfigured. Second, 780,000 to 1. 1 million American workers across 8 states face job losses within 12 to 18 months, with devastating impacts on individuals like Marcus Patterson facing unemployment at 51, Jennifer Holbrook trying to keep her daughter in college, and Thomas Chen watching his entire industry disappear. Third, the permanent destruction of specialized manufacturing capacity means that even if trade relationships were restored, rebuilding would require 15 to 20 years and up to $450 billion in investment, representing generational damage to America's industrial foundation. If you found this analysis valuable, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell because I'm tracking every development in this crisis as it unfolds. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand what's really happening beyond the political rhetoric. Here's what keeps me up at night. We're watching the dismantling of 6 decades of industrial integration in real time, and the workers bearing the cost had no vote in the decisions that destroyed their livelihoods. When political threats trigger permanent economic consequences, the gap between rhetoric and reality is measured in shattered lives and hollowed communities. That's the true cost of this crisis, and it's being paid right now by people who built their lives around the promise of American manufacturing.